Welcome to this episode of Faith Talks, where we have meaningful conversations about relevant issues through a biblical worldview. And today I have Dr. Joshua Smith with us today. And I want to give you a little bit of the history of Joshua. He actually was sent out, 23 years ago?
23 years ago.
23 years ago from here at Faith Community Church. We had the privilege of sending he and his wife Naomi to Pamplona, Spain, where you guys served for 8 years. 8 years, yeah. Right in that range. And then God directed them to a season of ministry in Mexico City. And God allowed them to see a church planted there and just a beautiful work that God was doing there. And then brought you guys stateside for a little while, where you guys worked with Reach Global and provided leadership to Latin America. And now they are excitedly setting their eyes on Spain again.
Yeah.
And this time Madrid this summer. So
That's right.
We've had a chance to know each other for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We were just commenting that the other night that we met each other in seminary, 23 years ago, probably right at the beginning, maybe even more,
Maybe
25.
Even more. 26 years ago.
Yes. And
You don't look a day older.
well, I appreciate that. But both me and my wife, Shannon, have had the privilege of developing a relationship with Joshua and his wife, Naomi, over the years. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about biblical community. And I can just share from personal experience of our time with Joshua and Naomi that this is something that's not just talk for them, that this is something that they are implementing well in the churches that God allows them to serve at. So I'm really excited about this conversation that we're about ready to have. And so I also just want to make reference that Joshua preached this past Sunday at Faith Community Church a message on life in community. And so this Faith Talks is really building off of that message. So if you didn't get a chance to see that message, we're going to link that message down in the description so you can watch it in full. But you talked on Sunday just about life in community, how it was broken in the garden.
Yeah.
How it's being restored through the church just presently. And then just how we need to work really, really hard at protecting and maintaining it. We talked a little bit about shame in that process. So those are some of the big main talking points. So we're going to let that be at least the launching point. We've got a few other questions that I want to go a little bit deeper on some of these things if we can. So one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of your sermon, Joshua, and we didn't get a chance to unpack it on Sunday morning, was this idea that living in community, biblical community, is an important part of and leads to greater Christian witness.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that, how our life together impacts our gospel testimony.
Yeah. So that really became a central theme in my ministry almost 20 years ago. So we were wrestling with how to share the gospel in northern Spain in a context where people would not engage. They wouldn't talk, they wouldn't discuss, they wouldn't argue. They just would not go there when you talk about Jesus, the Bible, God, anything. Yeah. So I started wrestling with how do you engage a people who won't listen? What does that look like? And there's actually a key passage that I read. It wasn't the first time I read it, but it hit me in a new way. It's John 13:35. It actually says, go a verse before, John 13:34, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." And I suddenly realized what Jesus is saying here isn't, he's not talking about our love for the world, although he wants us to love others. He's talking about our love for each other as brothers and sisters. Yeah. And he says that as we love one another, it'll become clear to those around us that we are his people. And that means that our life in community, as we love and care for one another, is part of our visible witness to the world. When you think of current America that values diversity and all those things, there's no community more diverse than the Church of Jesus, because it brings together people of different ethnic backgrounds, economic backgrounds, different passports, different social histories, and it unites them not because they're all the same, not because they have the same interests, but because of Jesus. Yeah. And so when that diverse group of people, when they love each other with the love of Jesus, it is a powerful witness to the world around us. And then after that, I was reading through Galatians, and we all know the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Those things aren't really things I do on my own.
Right. So one another's.
Those are one another's.
Yeah.
So we love one another.
Yeah.
We're patient with one another. We're kind toward one another. So what happens when a community of people live out the fruit of the Spirit together before a watching world? Or we even include non-believers into our circles of relationship. And as they see us experience and express the fruit of the Spirit, we're kind of giving them a glimpse of the kingdom of God, of the way the world was meant to be. So when I think of the new earth, heaven, what's going to be characterized by? Love, joy, peace, patience. And that can only happen in community. And we have the unique privilege of sharing life with one another before and alongside a watching world in a way that gives the world a glimpse of how things can be if they give their lives to Jesus Christ.
For sure. I was thinking too, you brought up that passage in John 13. There's another passage just a little bit later in John 17 that was really instrumental to me too as I thought about this question. And there we get the high priestly prayer of Jesus where he prays for his disciples, but he also prays for all of us, those that would believe through their witness. And his main prayer is that we would be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be one. And notice what he says then, so that the world may believe that you have sent me.
Yeah.
Jesus connects these two very clearly there of like, hey, as you as the followers treat one another and experience this kind of oneness and this kind of unity, it in many ways validates who I am and my message.
Yeah. And the reason it's so powerful in part is because it's so impossible to explain otherwise.
Yeah.
It's not
so
easy. It's not easy to be united with very different kinds of people in Jesus.
Yes.
And so the only way to explain it, the only way it can even happen is through the Spirit of God transforming us. And that does mean it's going to be messy along the way. It's going to be difficult.
Oh, for sure.
We have to,
for sure,
strangely fight for unity as God's people.
Well, and that leads us into a second thing I wanted to talk about. On Sunday, you talked about shame being a major roadblock to life and community. And I'm going to encourage you to watch the video on that particular one. But since we have a little bit more time now to talk about some of those other roadblocks, because I think we all long for it. We want it.
Yes.
Right?
Sounds
but
great.
So few of us truly experience it. So there's so many roadblocks and challenges to it. So what are some of the things that you've noticed as you've tried to build community, build that sort of unity, that there's been obstacles and hurdles?
Yeah. Well, in my message on Sunday, there's a much longer version of that I would have liked to have shared.
Okay, well, here it is.
So I talked about the threat of shame in destroying Christian community. I think the other major threat that comes to mind, and there are lots of them, but it's actually selfishness. Selfishness is the antithesis of biblical Christ-centered community. And that can actually manifest itself in a number of ways. One way it can manifest itself is by my selfishness saying, I don't need you. I don't need other people. I am fine on my own. And that's pretty typical in sort of an individualistic cultural framework where I say the church exists as a side thing for me, but it's not essential to my life, and I'm not essential to their life. And I kind of jokingly call that the bloody hand syndrome. And the idea is that if you walk outside of your house or your apartment or your dorm, and you see a bloodied hand in the street, you're going to kind of freak out, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
Like something is terribly wrong. It means that either there is a dead body somewhere else, or there is a body that is in severe need of an ambulance, right? And that's what happens with an individual Christian who says, I don't actually need the body, and the body doesn't really need me. They become this bloodied hand. And the danger is a bloodied hand cannot survive without the body. The body can actually survive without the bloodied hand, but it'll be limited in its function. It'll be forever damaged. So I think that individualistic selfishness, especially in the United States or in the Western world, is a primary threat to real godly community where we are interdependent, where we need one another. It's a 1 Corinthians 12 sort of idea. Another, I think, way that selfishness is expressed in our lives is by some saying that community exists for me.
Yes.
So instead of us existing,
how I want it.
Yes. Instead of existing for one another, it's all about me, and that can actually be found in really committed church members or church leaders, and it can be found on people on the margins. But they only want to receive; they want to take. They want things to be done according to their preferences, according to their desires, And when that doesn't happen, when they don't get what they want, whether it's money or it's respect or it's the musical style or preaching style that they prefer,
Right.
you better watch out
Right.
because they're going to demand it and they're going to intimidate you, or they're going to make you feel really bad because the whole community exists for their benefit. And that's a threat to real community.
Yeah.
And then there's one more that comes to mind. Selfishness can actually be the result of a really strong community. So we have this great thing going on where we're loving each other and we enjoy each other and we're learning together, but we want to keep it that way.
Yes.
And that means that we exist for our own well-being.
Yes.
We don't exist for the sake of the world. We're not welcoming to other people. We don't want to risk the good thing we have going on. That means that maintenance, that selfish maintenance mentality becomes more important than a mission mentality. And that can happen in all sorts of ways. In the business world or in the mission world, there's this idea that every new team member makes a new team.
Okay.
Your team is fundamentally changed whenever a new person comes in.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
So in a life group, in a church community, if a new person comes in, whether they're a non-believer or a longtime believer, they're going to change the dynamic. So are we willing to sacrifice the good thing we have going on to bring somebody else into our community for their well-being?
Yeah.
So I think
That's
that's
hard.
a huge threat. Oh, it's super hard.
We found that really challenging too. And we talk about lots of times living in community for us is in our life groups where people are meeting in homes.
Yeah.
Multiplying life groups is really challenging
Yes.
because when it clicks, you want to hold on to it so tightly. You're like, oh,
It's so
this
hard.
is so good.
It's so hard to get it there, right? So hard to get it where it actually clicks. And once it clicks, you do not want
protect
to
it,
let
but
go.
yes.
But what unites us ultimately as a community is pushing towards Jesus together.
Yeah.
So when we stop pushing towards Jesus together and we start existing to protect the good thing we have going on, we actually can oftentimes become sort of toxic toward one another.
Yeah.
We become ingrown. And so that desire to hold on to it actually becomes the greatest threat to true biblical community.
Yeah. That's hard. Like I said, we've all been there where we've got it and you want to keep it. Don't mess it up.
Yeah.
You know.
We had a situation in Mexico City years ago where we had started our church plant meeting in an apartment. And the plan was always to be a church that grew and planted other churches. We wanted to have this total mission mindset, you know. And we had filled the apartment with 20 people or so, and it was maxed out, and we couldn't meet there anymore. There's no one else could come in physically. And so we started looking for a place to rent on Sundays so we'd have a larger gathering, and we weren't ready to split into two groups with leadership and such. And one of our founding members, a wonderful woman, she said, "Why do we have to leave? We have such a great thing happening. We had intimacy and joy. I mean, it was just a great group. And it was really like a get behind me Satan sort of a moment where what this wonderful woman was doing unintentionally was she was threatening the entire purpose of our church plant. We existed to reach people with the good news of Jesus. What she was proposing was that we stop doing that. We exist for our own well-being.
For each other. Yeah.
And so I was able to encourage her and remind her what we were about. And she said yes, because she's a godly woman. And that resulted in so many people coming to know Christ and growing in Christ. But we had to sacrifice what we had in order to accomplish
And
it.
it feels paradoxical because the truth of the matter is you feel like, oh, if we focus on each other, we're going to have deeper community.
Yeah.
But it actually starts to snuff out the life and the oxygen of the group when you become internal focused like that.
It's even in a marriage. I know for Naomi and I, we are most united when we are pursuing Jesus radically together.
Right.
It's going towards Him together that actually unites us. If we stop pursuing Jesus and we start pursuing each other primarily, I can't provide Naomi what she needs.
It's a recipe for unmet expectations and disappointment.
Yeah, I'm a terrible God, and she's a terrible goddess.
Yeah.
But when we fix our eyes on Jesus and we're going the same direction, there's a unity of heart and mission and purpose that has actually, as a whole, given us a really incredible marriage.
Wow. Well, that's really, helpful to think about. I mean, I think that all of us can relate to just that selfishness that we contribute into these groups. I think one thing is I think about with that selfishness that I know I experienced when I really started to try to pursue this as a young man is something I think Bonhoeffer talks about in his book Life Together, where we have an idealized view of what it is.
Yes.
And we're not ready for what real is.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was going to be so glorious like you read about in the books, and then it was very mundane and ordinary and conflict and struggle and complaint. And you realize, oh, community is, like you said at the beginning, it's messy.
Yeah.
And it's really important and it's necessary. But my idealized view of it, how it was going to be, did not match up with reality. And I think a lot of people exit at that particular point.
Yes, that's a great point. That idealism is a
Yes.
threat to true community because you think it's going to be this
gonna be
perfect,
great.
beautiful,
Yes.
harmonious, mission-minded thing, and then you deal with real people, including yourself, who are messy.
Yep.
One of the things I found, we really love the idea of intentional missional community, whether you call it life group or community group or missional community, whatever it is. But some of that mission-mindedness in those communities only works well when people are single and they don't have families.
Yes.
Or the university students. And a lot of the models for missional community that we were told, like, hey, this is where it's at, people, they were typically people without kids.
Yes.
They were young, had a lot more freedom with their time. And when you start adding children to the mix and full-time jobs and all those things, it
and a
is
commute
very
time.
difficult to experience real community in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to, that's where it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we have to embrace just the full messiness of that. But so our goal is, even as we're having this conversation, is that you would value community enough to press past these things, because the end really is worth it. And that's where I really want to maybe conclude with this last question. Perhaps you were there on Sunday and you were moved to say, okay, I know that there's something better. I should be living in greater community. Or maybe you're even listening to this and you're like, yes, I know that I need to do that. Let's maybe conclude our time by talking about some practical steps, because sometimes I think it's very tempting to want to go from A to Z like right away.
Yeah.
And most of the time we need to have smaller, more clearly defined steps.
Yeah.
So if you were to just think through, somebody's in that spot, like, I know that I need this, it hasn't been central to my life, and I want to start moving towards that. What would be some practical steps that they could start to take even now that might help?
At Faith Community specifically, I say the first step is join a life group.
Yeah.
The reality is you cannot have the depth of intimacy and community that you need on a Sunday morning with as many people that are participating in Sunday morning. You just can't be tight with 200 people or 300 people or 400 people. There's a place for that, for shared mission and vision and teaching and encouragement, but choosing to prioritize time in your schedule to be part of a smaller community, a life group here, I think is a really foundational first step. And related to that would be, to the degree you can, in the real world, creating some margin in your life for people.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're so busy, or if you have kids, you're involved in so many activities that there's no margin in your life to spend time with people. You just can't do it. So you actually have to prioritize relationship, and that means cutting back on certain things. Honestly, with our kids in high school, now they're finally graduating, the third of the fourth are graduating, we made a kind of a weird choice, even for Christians. And I'm not saying this is what everyone has to do. Right. But we told our kids they could do one extracurricular activity per year.
Okay.
They could do a sport, they could do theater, but we only allowed for one thing.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is we wanted to create margin in our family's life to share time with each other, but also share life with other people. And we saw how quickly all of our time got eaten up by their various activities. And it was a little bit painful to say they couldn't do certain things, but in the end, it really did create a more healthy family and a more healthy engagement with our broader church body.
Yeah.
Another main piece of that too is a practical next step is go serve somebody and let someone serve you.
Yeah, that one is really hard.
Ask for help and allow them to serve you.
That's the interdependence part.
Yes.
Interdependence requires a two-way street on some of those things. Yeah.
Allow yourself to be weak in front of somebody else and allow them to serve you. And that will create a kind of spark for unity that you maybe have not experienced up to this point.
Yeah.
We were talking last night actually at a life group about the need to be for one another. And that's maybe not practical, it's more theoretical. But there is this element of having a posture of I need to be for you. If I'm not for you, then I'm not going to spend time investing in you. I'm not going to let you screw up and offer forgiveness.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut you off. So having a posture of being for one another in the local church body, not looking for the speck in our sister's eye, allowing someone to fail and then to forgive them 7 times 7, that posture will create unity.
Yeah.
And if we sense that people are not for us, then we will not open our hearts and our minds and our lives and our weaknesses and find grace because we'll be afraid of what will happen when
sure.
we open ourselves.
For sure. I mean, that bedrock of trust has to be there. Otherwise, it's really difficult to ask somebody to bare all of their soul in a situation where they don't trust that the person is for them.
Yeah.
That's harmful and probably just too dangerous to ask for a person to do.
Yeah.
I'm laying my heart on here when I know that you're not for me.
Yeah.
Those are really great thoughts. I'll speak to the audience here a little bit too, especially those of you at Faith Community Church. I want to give you license or freedom to say no to certain things, because the truth of the matter is sometimes we compare our lives to other people. And we think, oh, they're doing like X, Y, Z, all these different things, and what's wrong with me? Or I need to do all these things, otherwise I'm kind of like a C- Christian. No, I want to give you the freedom of saying, okay, if we need to say no to even some really good things in order to free up time so that we can genuinely be in community together, that's a good and right and necessary decision that you need to make. And you're not doing nothing. Now, you do have to seize that time. I think we've talked about that before. Sometimes you can free up your whole schedule, and if you're not purposeful with that time, then you just become lazy.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
Community takes hard work.
Yes.
Investing in one another.
Yes. So, but if you don't carve out that time, it's probably never going to happen.
Yeah,
I think about it even just as we probably understand this better with our money, but time's the same way. Yeah. Like Shannon and I have realized that if we don't set it aside in the budget, it's not going to be there. Like we can say we want to do this, but if it's not in the budget to do it, the chances of it just magically being there when we need it, it's not going to happen. I think time is the same way.
And as you do that, value the small things too. So have someone over for coffee for an hour. It doesn't have to be going on a major camping trip together, which is also great.
Yeah.
But take advantage of the small moments, or even go to soccer practice together with another believer from your church.
Yes.
And have that be part of your rhythm of life. And then speak the truth in love to one another, encourage one another, and encourage those who are around you, and show them the beauty of Christian community.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think all those things are super helpful. And you and Naomi have modeled for us well, too, of just that intentionality of relationship, even just in the small little moments throughout the day, of the barista who's making your coffee, of the fellow parent who's sitting in the bleachers with you. Those are all gospel opportunities for you to start to develop those relationships with them, and maybe even invite them into that community somewhere along the way.
Yeah, one of the best ways to engage in evangelism, we're pretty convinced, is bring your non-believing and believing worlds together.
Yeah.
That can happen at a sports game, that can happen at a party, whatever it is, but find ways to bring those worlds together and let the Christians' love for one another and love for the unbeliever shine. It doesn't have to be a program. There doesn't have to be like a 5-minute devotional at the end. Just bring believers and non-believers together and let God do his sweet work in all of their lives.
Yeah. Well, Joshua, this has been super helpful to talk more just about life and community. I hope as you're listening to it, you're longing for greater depth in your community with your fellow believers, with a heart towards seeing how God might use that to bring others in, that group might continue to grow for the sake of the gospel. And perhaps maybe you can take some of those practical steps. So thank you, Joshua, for being with us on this particular one. If you found this video helpful, we have more resources like this at our website, faithcommunitychurch.com. You can just click on the resource tab and you'll find videos, podcasts, and other things that will help you in your walk with Jesus. So God bless you today, and hopefully we'll see you in a video later on.